Welcome back to COM100, and today we're going to talk about Chapter 8. And this is the first of 3 chapters that we're going to be looking over that focuses on interpersonal communication. And I'm sure you remember from our first video where I introduced myself to you, I told you that interpersonal communication, that's my favorite. And so I love these chapters. I love thinking about how important interpersonal communication is within our lives and thinking about how we're surrounded about it all the time. I love that your book starts with talking about the TV show The Bachelor slash Bachelorette because I think they're into season like 20 now, maybe more. I don't keep up with it, so I don't know. But it talks about how people love these shows, these reality love shows, in a sense, of how people build interpersonal relationships with one another. And they're trying to find love. But also, I want it to be known that interpersonal does not equal love. It just equals, a close relationship with others. So our chapter is first going to, these are all of our objectives. So we're going to define interpersonal communication. We're going to talk about why we want to form these relationships. Then the 4 types of relationships within interpersonal communication, and then the stages of relationships. The stages is my absolute favorite theory ever. So I'm super excited to share that with you today. So let's first define interpersonal communication. You can see here that interpersonal communication is communication within 2 people. And now sometimes we'll see in a lot of research, they call it dyads or dyadic, which means a pair of people. It involves pairs of people, 2 people. So communication between a dyad in which the messages exchanges significantly impact the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors, and the relationships of the people involved. You truly care about what this person has to say to you, and they truly care what you have to say to them. Now, anyone with whom we have a meaningful interaction, that is interpersonal communication. So you can think to yourself, you go to the same coffee shop every single day. You see the same barista, you have the same kind of conversation. Hi, how are you? They have your drink ready for you. You exchange pleasantries, and then you leave. And then one day you go to that same coffee shop and it's a different barista. And you still have the same type of communication. Same like pleasantries, and you're just being kind to them. You know, do you have a interpersonal communication behavior with that barista that you know? Not really, because you're not significantly impacting one another, your thoughts, emotions, behaviors, relationships, all of that. So when I think about interpersonal communication and who I involve myself with this, it's usually the people I'm closest to, my family, my close friends, the people I'm surrounded by, the people I care about, and the people I care about what they have to say to me. Now, interpersonal communication, there's a ton of research on this that it can improve our health and it can improve the happiness of our other relationships. So, for example, if you're talking to friends about your romantic relationship, this is going to help you be more clarified in your romantic relationship because you're able to share with others, get different perspectives. So, there's all these different ways in which interpersonal communication is. And the first one is that it's transactional. It has to be transactional because it deals with you and another person, a dyad, remember? And so both individuals, they're contributing to the meaning created during the communication. They're contributing towards what is like happening with this communicative behavior and what's normal for them. Now, you also want to think too that if I'm texting a friend, they're going to text me back, right? Transactional is going back and forth. Think back to the transactional model that we talked about in like chapter 1. We both have to be receiving and sending messages, giving feedback, all of that. Now, it can, though, be linear. So think about the linear model, right? I have a message I send to you, and then that's it. And so, depending on the situation, yeah, of course, this is going to happen. Maybe your friend is venting to you about their issues. They have a problem, and you're just there to listen, right? And then, actually, at the end of the encounter, your friendship can strengthen just by you listening. You were there, you were supportive. You didn't have to like verbally say anything. But it is transactional because you're still there, you're investing your time, and you're just being part of like the friendship and you care about that person. Interpersonal communication is also dynamic. Why I want you to think here that it is constantly changing. And what that means is that in our lives, our perceptions, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, they're continually going to shift. The way I felt about coffee when I was 8 years old has drastically changed now that I'm older, right? I love coffee. And so it's dynamic in that it's changing. So, of course, in that like silly example of coffee, other ways in my life, my perceptions, my thoughts, my attitudes, they're continually going to shift. And so with interpersonal communication, the way I'm talking to someone, it's going to change. And so no two interactions with the same person will ever be identical because they are also dynamic. They are changing. I am changing. So that's like the great thing about communication. You're never going to say the exact same thing to the exact same answers every single time. Now, of course, we might say the same answers, but of course, the way we say it and all of that could be different. That's why it's dynamic. We're not robots. We're going to talk about things and our perceptions and those interactions they're gonna change. And we want them to. Interpersonal communication, it's also relational. And so what this means is that the way that I talk to my mom, the relationship I have with my mom, it's going to be very different than the relationship I have with my partner. And so with interpersonal communication, it builds bonds with others, easing the distance that naturally arises from differences between people. If I'm trying to understand my partner in a different way, thinking about our differences, well, I want to create that bond, so I want to understand that difference. Same with my mom, understanding her difference, but it's going to be a little bit different. Now, we do not have to agree with everything another person says, and I think that's important here. But we can still approach that individual with an open mind, listening to differences, understanding differences, and it's okay to have our own perceptions, thoughts, feelings, emotions about something. Now, it's relational in a way too, because research says, first off, it's going to enhance our overall well-being. We're going to feel better with interpersonal communication. It's going to aid our resilience. So when bad things happen to us, the way we bounce back, we're going to have like a support system and we're going to be able to do that. And then also we're going to feel less loneliness. That makes sense because if you have interpersonal communication, you're going to have people that want to be around you and supportive, and you're not going to feel so lonely. It is also impactful. It impacts our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, and relationships with the people taking part in this interpersonal communication. It impacts us because we notice something about other people, and then it's like, what is that going to do to you? How is that going to influence you? I always love to ask the question of when was the last time you were influenced on TikTok or social media, right? We're influenced in like the weirdest ways. And so, of course, with interpersonal communication, we're going to be influenced and it's going to be impactful into our lives. Now, we do have impersonal communication, and this talks about how you're not really actually influenced by someone. You're not perceived by their thoughts, their emotions, behaviors. It's negligible. And so I put this example here. It is from your book. You ask your classmate what time it is. They show you their phone. They don't say anything to you. You look, okay, done. And then that's it. So it's not like you were influenced in any way. And so even though you have a relationship with this classmate, they're just your classmate, your friend, right? It's not impactful. And so it's just an impersonal communication. There's nothing too hefty here. I do like this picture because it's a cartoon and it says, did you notice that we've been matching a lot lately? And so it's impactful and like we look at the people closest to us. How do you start dressing the same? How do you start talking the same? Do you use the same slang? Think about the language chapter. Do you have the same attitudes? Do you listen to the same music? We're influenced and that's okay. But we hope that they're good influences, right? And that they're not like bad or detrimental to ourselves. So, why should we form these relationships? We can understand that they're impactful and that they're part of our lives. And so, with interpersonal relationships, now, here's that definition: the emotional, mental, and physical involvements that we forge with others through communication. And so these five characteristics are pretty important when it comes to why should we form relationships? Well, why do I need any type of interpersonal relationship, or how can I get an interpersonal relationship? And first off, we have proximity, which focuses on you're just near this person. You have frequent contact with them. We're going to get into this key term, the mere exposure effect. And so we're more likely to pursue relationships with people whom we have frequent contact. Think about if you're in class and you're sitting next to the same person every Monday, Wednesday. And so after like 2 months, maybe you see each other and you're talking and you have like more conversation that's outside of like classroom topics, right? And so proximity, this is the easiest way for us to like start forming interpersonal relationships. I also think back to like high school when you were in high school from Monday through Friday, like 8 to 2 or whatever. You're with the same people, you've been with the same people year after year. And so, of course, it's easier to make friends in that kind of proximity. And then now you're an adult and you all have crazy schedules. So, of course, you're going to lose friendships. I like to have these two TV shows here because first off, we have Parks and Rec, which is, a workplace environment, but they all work together. They're surrounded by each other. And if you've ever seen the show, you know that like some of them, they're not originally working in the Parks and Rec office. I think Andy in the front, he was just in a band in the beginning. And then he was shining shoes. And so he's in the hallway. And it's just a proximity of like being there and being part of this, culture. We also have New Girl down here, where these interpersonal relationships, they were all formed because the main girl in the middle, Jess, she moves in with the three guys. And so they automatically all become friends because, they're having frequent contact with each other. Then she brings in her friends, and then the friend starts dating one of them because of the frequent contact. It's easier to have these interpersonal relationships when you see people. Now, the second one is resources. A lot of times we want to make friends or have interpersonal relationships because we value qualities people possess. And so here's a list of different qualities that you can think of, personality traits, physical skills, social status, material wealth, sense of humor, intelligence, kindness, supportiveness. Have you ever thought to yourself, I need to be sure to be friends with someone with a truck in case I ever have to move? And so thinking about that, that's a resource in a sense, what can this person like provide me? And so this does go into the social exchange theory. And when you think about the social exchange theory, I want you to think about costs and benefits. Those are the two main things here, costs and benefits. And so we'll feel drawn to individuals who offer us substantial benefits. And what that means is positive things we like, we want. What do you get out of this relationship? And few costs. So, what negative things are demanded of us in return? I think to myself, if I have a friend who, she's very kind to me and she always includes me and she cares about my feelings, that those are some good benefits. But the cost is that whenever we hang out, she just talks the entire time about her life. She doesn't ask about me. And it's just kind of difficult to have a transactional interaction with her. And so I don't feel seen sometimes. And so you can see how, well, is that really outweighing the benefits, or do the benefits, kindness, caring about me, all of that, does that outweigh the cost? A lot of times we're actually giving and taking in relationships. And so it's interesting to think of the ways that we do so. Now, the social exchange theory, it predicts that we will pursue a relationship if we think that person offers us rewards we believe we deserve. We believe that we should get out of. And of course, we're going to continue that interpersonal relationship. Now, our third one here, why we form relationships, it's similarity. And then I want you to think that when you become friends with someone or romantically involved with someone, one of the first things we do is that we like to find similarities. That's an easy way to have a conversation, right? And so we get into birds of a feather effect. Have you ever heard of birds of a feather flock together? So we seek relationships with those whom we see as similar to ourselves. I think that's great. Like when you start meeting someone, maybe romantically, you ask what type of music you listen to, and you start realizing, oh, we listen to a lot of the same music, and you share that bond, you share that experience. And so I put this song here by Billie Eilish, Birds of a Feather, We Should Stick Together, because it's like we feel like we need that in our lives, that similarity to bring us together, and then we can enjoy life together with our similar things. I do have a question for you, and it's which one of you think is strong? Which one of you think is stronger? Opposites attract versus birds of a feather. And so a lot of times we think that in romantic relationships, oh, opposites attract. That's how you make life more fun. You're able to teach each other things. Or is birds of a feather, is that better? Is that stronger? I'm going to tell you, research says that if you're looking for a long-term, committed, romantic relationship, it's got to be birds of a feather because you need to have that similarity all throughout the years, the longevity of it. Now, you do enjoy opposites attract in short-term romantic relationships. In short-term relationships, it's fun because you get to learn something, the novelty of something in life. But if you continually had that novelty in long term, you get pretty tired. The uncertainty would be there and you would just not really enjoy it. Then we have the reciprocal liking, and that's when you're forming a friendship, a relationship, you got to think, okay, I like this person. Do they like me? And so if someone we're interested in makes it clear that they are also interested in you, they want to be your friend, they want to hang out with you, then of course that's going to help us form relationships. It increases the chance that you will forge a relationship then, because once you realize you both have that, attraction or liking, then that relationship is going to form into something. And this is actually the most mentioned factor leading to love in romantic relationships. So people that are romantically involved with each other to see if they, are committed and they love each other, because you can be in a romantic relationship, not know if you love each other yet, you just really like each other. But when you're talking about this, it's going to lead towards love if you both actually admit that you like one another. So think about this picture. This picture is perfect. Do you like me? Yes or no? If we both say yes, then this is going to really help our relationship. And our last one is physical attractiveness. And we like to form relationships with people because we're attracted to them. We like what we see. Maybe we like their clothes. We like the way they dress, their shoes. We like their hair, their face, things like that. And so your book really focuses a lot on attractive people. And it's interesting because there's a lot of research here about attractive people, and it leads us to the beautiful is good effect. And so what this means is that attractive people are often assumed to over other valued resources. They're assumed to have, these different ways of like, oh, I can do whatever I want because I'm attractive, And so I want to take a moment here and pause and think about if the beautiful is good. One second here, please. Attractive people are often assumed to offer other valued resources. So thinking about being competent communication skills, having good intelligence, being well adjusted and their personalities. And so with this, they are able to just like, I don't want to say get away with things, but they can because people, they see, a beautiful person and they let it go with anything, right? But some research kind of goes against it and says, okay, more physically attracted by others had shorter marriages and higher divorce rates than their less attractive counterparts. Now, there is research to figure out if you're attractive or not. And so thinking, I know that it's kind of, it's not really a fun thing to talk about, like, am I attractive and things like that. But there is a way to kind of figure that out and thinking, okay, being more physically attractive, you might have shorter marriages, you might have higher divorce rates. That's what the research points to. And this is usually due to a range of, more alternative partners are available towards attractive people and also poaching attempts. And so your book talks about poaching attempts, saying that Others, they're more likely to like hit on attractive people continuously and try to lure them away from their partners. I think that's so sad. But if you're too attractive, is that going to be hard to be in a relationship with other people? Probably. So now we're going to get into four different types of relationships. So type of relationships here, we go for romantic, friendly, friends, and then workplace. So first off, romantic, one of my favorites. And this is romantic relationships are defined as our interpersonal involvements in which the participants perceive the bond as romantic. You're all about love. You're about making that special bond with someone, and it is rooted in perception. I think this is huge because a romantic relationship exists whenever the two partners believe that they do. Do you ever feel like you've started dating someone and it's like, well, what's our label, right? Are we dating? Are we in a relationship? Am I girlfriend, boyfriend, partner? We have to put labels on things. But perception between the two people involved, that's when they believe that they are in a romantic relationship. Now, if one person feels romantic and the other does not, then they don't have a romantic relationship. So this happens a lot, especially with college students. I put here the issue with situationships. Sometimes, there's not like clear rules laid out with situationships or friends with benefits. And so thinking about the romantic relationship, someone can get hurt here because they're in a romantic relationship alone. And the other person, they're not there. So you have to kind of understand exactly what your intentions are with these types of relationships. Now, when we think about romantic relationships, it is important to think about liking and loving. Your book has a lot of definitions about, liking, affection, respect. These are all really important when understanding that you like someone versus when you love someone, loving the intimacy and the caring and attachment to someone. Now, I do think that you can love your friends, you can love someone in a non-romantic way, but this is all about intensity. It's about how intense you feel liking, loving, and then the other definitions I said quickly attachment, caring, intimacy, all of these. The more you feel these things, then it's probably leading towards a romantic relationship. Then we also have passionate and companionate love. Now, with passionate love, I want you to think about the fire in a relationship, and it's like really heightened in the beginning of the relationship. It's exciting, it's passionate love. It is usually linked towards, sexual desire with one another. And then, sadly, that passion is going to fade with the longevity of your relationship. But it fades into companion love, which I think is actually stronger. And so, companion love, this is looking at the emotional investment that you have with one another, the close intertwining of like two people, they're together in life here. And so, it's like, hey, I like that. Now, you do want to take note here with passionate companion love, and you think, okay, the passion, it's going to die out in your romantic relationship. So that's why you have to do those spontaneous things. That's why you have to have those monthly date nights or weekly date nights, right? You have to go to the cooking classes. You have to go on trips. You have to like invest in the relationship still. Now we have family relationships, and this is your definition of family, which is quite long. And so it says a network of people who share their lives over long periods of time and are bound by marriage, blood, or commitment. They consider themselves a family and then also communicate with one another as a family. And then they share a significant history and an anticipated future of functioning in a family relationship. So, what I see here, I see three major themes. First off, shared identity. You kind of understand who you all are. You know, you think about like, okay, these are the stories that we share among our family. We think about our culture. We think about our holidays, those family stories that you love to all talk about, right? The shared identity of recognizing like who you are. Your book also talks to you about the importance of, physical and mental attributes that are throughout our shared identity. So thinking, how do you look like your mom or dad? How do you look like maybe a different family member? The shared identity, like you're truly sharing these genes, and then also the mental attributes too. Thinking about, similar personalities or even mental abilities and the way we relate to others. Now, with family relationships, we do have multiple roles. And this is pretty interesting to think about. Okay, I am a daughter, right? And I think I am a daughter to my parents, but then I'm also a granddaughter to, my grandpa. And so when I play the role of daughter and granddaughter, is it the same? I would say it is, right? But then let's say that I had kids. And then if I was a mom, I would play the role as mom, daughter, and granddaughter. And so all these multiple roles, they can be kind of confusing. And you can see how kids that have grown up and now have their own kids dealing with different power differences, and maybe parents as they get older, maybe they need help but they don't have so much power anymore, but they still have respect. There's just a lot of complexity here, which leads to emotional complexity. This is the last one. And so, with emotional complexity, I want you to think that, hey, we think that all our family relationships are perfect, and we're going to deal with conflict. And so it can be really difficult dealing with conflict with family, putting up boundaries, saying no to going home for the holidays, maybe the emotional complexity of like, well, I'm upset with my family and I'm upset that I'm upset at them, right? And so we think these people are supposed to support us, and I'm supposed to support them too, but it can just be difficult. There's a lot going on here, right? I do want to share this research, and it said between 1960 and 2020. So I know that's quite a large chunk, but pretty recent. It said married couples with biological children in the US declined from 44% to 19%. I would love to know what that difference is today. We're 5 years later from when this was collected. And I think a lot of it has to deal with the rise of DINKs, which is dual income, no kids families. And so it's a couple and they both work full time and they don't have kids and they don't want to have kids because they're just focusing on themselves. And that's becoming more popular in our society. And so married couples with biological kids, it's going down. And so it's interesting, why? This is our third type of French relationships, and now it's friendships. This one's my favorite one. I did my dissertation on friendships. And first of all, these friendships, they are voluntary interpersonal relationships, and it's going to be characterized by intimacy and liking. You have to think, first of all, that you want to like to be around this person. You like them. And then with intimacy, because you talk about some deep topics, right? You're personal with them, the self-disclosure is up there. And these friendships, they are a source of emotional security, self-esteem, and then a sense of belonging. They make us feel seen in ways that other people don't make us seen. Or maybe they make us feel ways that we're seen in ways that like we're not forced to, you know? So like, yeah, you would assume that your family, of course, they see you and they recognize you, but it's nice to get that validation from someone outside in the world. Now, you have three characteristics here when it comes to friendships. And first off, it's liking. And with liking, you want to think that you like the person. You like them. You like the way that you feel when you hang out with them, which is interesting because I had a note here about frenemies and that we like the drama, but we don't like them. So it's like, why are we still in this friendship with them? Well, we just like the drama. Now we also have choice here, and that when we're choosing our friends, what we do with any other relationship, we're choosing our friends differently than other relationships. And so you're choosing the choice of like, I want to be friends with you, whereas some relationships, we don't have the choice. And then lastly, another characteristic is the shared interest. Similar to birds of a feather, you have similar interests as being the primary factor of you like first forming or forging a relationship. Friendships, they are less stable though, and more likely to change than based off of like romantic or family relationships. We don't have too much like here, so we need to think to ourselves, let's be gentle with what we have, our friendship, and when we have different interests, let's not let it be the end of us because these relationships are the easiest to like snap off. Our last one we're going to talk about today is workplace relationships. And so I want you to think when you're working and the people you're sitting next to. Those are the people you have a workplace relationship. You see every Monday through Friday, but you're not actually like friends because you don't hang out, you don't text. And so these are affiliations we do have with professional peers, supervisors, so people above us, subordinates, so people below us, and then also mentors. Now, most workplaces, they are structured hierarchically. So thinking about when you're friends with your boss, is there a sense of power there? These relationships, they do vary in intimacy. And I think about the amount of openness that I have at my workplace. Maybe I'm not really open with people about my personal life. And then maybe there's that one person that I work with who they know a little bit about what's going on. And so that's okay. So it's going to vary in intimacy. And some people, they're just an open book, right? Now, we define by varying degrees of choice. What this means is that thinking about the choice of who am I actually going to invest time in? Who am I actually going to invest like a relationship with versus just a workplace relationship? We have the choice and we do choose this. Alrighty, so this is going to be the last thing that I talk to you about today, and it's NAP's relationship stages. This is my absolute favorite theory, and I don't have slides on it for you because I want to talk you through it because I truly do love this. And so you can see it's a staircase, and we're going to start at the bottom and we're going to go up and then we're going to go down. And so this is the stages of relationships. It was originally designed with romantic relationships in mind, but it could be for friendships, it could be for other types of relationships, just a little bit harder to define the terms within those different types of relationships. So I do, for the sake of discussing this, let's think about romantic relationships only. And so let's start off with initiating at the very bottom in the blue circle. With initiating, this is when we decide if we want to get to know someone better. So, when you're at a party, you see someone across the room, you make eye contact with them and you feel that attractiveness. And you think, like, I'm going to go initiate a conversation. I'm going to go see, what happens. So you go and you talk to someone. This is very superficial information, right? So when you're initiating, you're talking about your name, your major, where you work, nothing too intense. And then maybe you say, like, hey, let's go get coffee. You want to, initiate something. So now we're going up the staircase to the second step, which is experimenting. So I view this as you're at the dinner or you're at coffee and you're experimenting on like, well, what's your favorite type of food? What's your favorite type of holiday? Do you like coffee or do you like tea? You're experimenting to see their answers and if they fit with you. I view it like chemistry, and you have your two like bottles and you're seeing what's going to happen, right? And it's like, could this work? Could this not work? I know your book says like when you're exchanging demographic information, we're getting a little bit further into our interaction, but not too intense. Because then once we start getting intense, that's when we're intensifying the third step. With intensifying, I view this as you've been hanging out now 3 to 5 times at least, and you're intensifying by, first off, the things you're talking about. You're increasingly becoming more intimate in the topics that you're discussing. Maybe you're starting to kiss, it depends on your different characteristics. And so you're kind of like expressing them to you what you're feeling, and how you're feeling about things, and you're being more vulnerable and you're okay with the risk. Now, most friendships, they're going to end right here between experimenting and intensifying. They get a little intense, but like not really. And so it's amazing to think that if we go through all of these steps with a romantic relationship, we're not experimenting or we're not experiencing these steps with anybody else. So intensifying, we feel strongly attracted to this other person. It could be verbal, it could also be nonverbal. Now, when we feel really intense with them, we begin integrating. This is our fourth step. This one is when one personality and their partners, they seem to blend, like you're truly becoming one in a sense. I view this as when you're talking to your friends and they ask you, "What did you do on the weekend?" And you say, "Oh, we went to Trader Joe's and we did this, we saw a movie." And they already know you're talking about you and your partner. They already know what we means. And so by saying we or are using that language, integrating through engaging, maybe in sharing belongings, you're sharing clothes, music, what else? Shared living spaces, photos, all of this. You're really integrating each other into your lives. I also view this too as when you're involving your families. So you're integrating them, you're bringing them into your family and trying to make them feel seen and part of your family. Then we get into bonding. And so bonding is the last step. And this is usually a public ritual that announces to the world that you and your partner, you're together. You've made a commitment to each other, i.e., you're getting married. So that's why it's difficult to think about this theory in not a romantic relationship. But I think we can kind of theorize here. So if bonding for a romantic relationship is getting married, it's got to be something kind of legal and binding. So maybe you get a mortgage, you buy a house, maybe you get an apartment, maybe you adopt a kid, maybe you adopt a pet. But I also think you can do some of that with friends. So with friends, you can also share a lease. You can also get an apartment, you can adopt a pet. I also think too bonding is like you could get matching tattoos as well. There's different ways to like experience bonding with someone, but it's gotta be some kind of like, you know, public ritual, some kind of public announcement in a sense. Your book has an example of a non-romantic relationship, and it was saying how these two people, their bond was when they got a bagel shop together. That's an investment, right? So I want you to think romantic relationship, you go up all these steps, and now you're hanging out at the top where it says relational maintenance. You've already come together now. And so you're married, and it's like, okay, don't have to think about my marriage anymore. It's like, no, you have to deal with relational maintenance then your entire life, your entire relationship. And so again, that's why those date nights come into play. That's why you have to care for your relationship like a plant because you have to make sure that you're each feeling happy and seen and loved. Because if you're not, you're going to slowly come apart. Now let's look at the red area. This is the very last thing I'll talk to you about today. So the red area, the coming apart, first off, you're going to start differentiating. And so with differentiating, you start seeing little differences that are bothering you. That's why I like to bring up, opposites attract, birds of a feather flock together, all of that. Right away, we start noticing those differences and they annoy us. They get us mad. I think our book says here too is that the beliefs, attitudes, and values that distinguish us from our partners come to dominate our thoughts and communication. We're just kind of like, we're just thinking about it all the time. It's annoying us. Then we go a little deeper into circumscribing. And this one is when partners respond to problematic differences by ignoring them or spending less time talking. You're kind of cutting yourself out away from each other and you're not dealing with issues together at all. And this can be bad. Now, I want to pause here for a second and notice the circle around relational maintenance. Can you see my cursor? So see this giant circle around here? Relational maintenance actually is involved with these four steps. So integrating and bonding, we can go back and forth, between them. When we're being part of each other's lives, we're bonded. And then sometimes I want you to think about a romantic relationship that's ever hit a rough patch, but they did not get divorced. They didn't break up. Maybe they were just differentiating. Maybe they were having a hard time communicating, so they were circumscribing, but then they were able to, move on and get over it together happily. So relational maintenance, it's good things and then it can also involve bad things, but we're able to go back and forth. That's what's really cool about this theory. Now, let's say you're not able to, with circumscribing, you're still ignoring them and you're still spending less time talking. Then we get into stagnating. So this is your third step for coming apart. Stagnating means that there's no safe topics to talk about. That you're constantly, at like you're constantly conflicting with each other. It says your communication kind of seems like at a standstill, like you just cannot talk ever about anything without it being a fight, or maybe you just don't want to share with them. It says here that communication is perceived as pointless because you're just mad and you're just annoyed and you're over it. So when you're mad and annoyed and over it, then you're going to go into avoiding and you don't want to talk to them. You don't want to deal with them. They decide that they can no longer be around each other. They start really distancing themselves from one another. They have avoidance directly, both verbally and non-verbally. And so you can just kind of feel like, what's happening here? It does say here that you can think about maybe when you're screening someone's phone calls or when you ignore their texts. Maybe you change your status on Facebook, which I feel like dates this book then, because do people do that? And then also maybe unfollowing or defriending someone on social media. That goes into avoiding. It makes me question if you're involved in ghosting. Is this where it would happen in avoiding? Probably. And now the last one, terminating, that's when you have the conversation that you're over at the end of a relationship. They discuss the past, the present, and the future relationship, and maybe it doesn't involve one another, right? And so ghosting would live at the avoiding step because with ghosting, we don't have that conversation. So then we always have the uncertainty of like, hey, what happened? But terminating, you have that clear communication that the relationship is over. So can you take a moment to look at this diagram, this theory, Knapp's staircase model, and you can see that not all relationships are going to experience the coming apart. But I do want you to think about the coming together. Can you skip some stairs? I think you can. Now, when this theory was originally made, it was very like traditional in a sense, and Knapp thought, hey, we need to see these staircases and these steps in this certain way. And it's like, well, as research has gone on, as technology has become a thing, I think about again situationships, friends with benefits. Maybe we can go all over the place here. Does it necessarily mean that it's a bad relationship? No, of course not. But I want us to then think too about the coming apart, how we can have really difficult times, but we can maybe be okay. So maybe it's more than just two stairs at the very top, but it's nice to think about our own relationships and how they can fit in here and what we've seen. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I know it was a lot. It's one of my favorite chapters, though, and we're going to continue the conversation of interpersonal. So I hope you have a good one. I'll see you later.